Powering more than you can do in the classic lift, so power snatching or power cleaning more than you can make in the full snatch or full clean is a pretty frustrating situation to be in, but it's simple to fix. It just takes some diligence and practice in the right areas. So first thing we need to know is, why does it happen? Why is it that somebody is power snatching or power cleaning more than they can do in a classic snatch or clean? And there's really three main reasons for this. The first, too much emphasis on pulling the bar up. How do we correct this? Well, the first thing we need to do is emphasize moving under the bar. The biggest way to do this is start with the concept of moving under the bar properly. This is best achieved with a drill we call the muscle snatch into squat. The muscle snatch into squat drill is a drill where we're going to teach ourselves how to simultaneously pull up against the bar while we're squatting down into the bottom position. So it's going to start where you stand in the power position. You're going to bend your elbows and bend your knees and squat down at the same time. So it's going to look like a muscle snatch, but instead of receiving the bar with your legs straight, you're going to be in the bottom of the squat at the end of it. This is a great drill to reinforce the concept of pulling up on the bar as you're squatting down. In addition to that, it's a great drill to sort of reinforce the movement of your body downward without having to think about catching the bar first. So you can squat down while your arms are pulling up against the bar. The next stage would be to move to a snatch from the hip or a clean from the hip. This is an exercise where we start with the bar basically in the power position, so the same place as the muscle snatch into squat, but we're going to go from here, bending our knees a little bit and just driving ourselves up into the bar and then squatting down immediately after. So there's going to be a little bit of an acceleration, but not enough to generate a ton of power. So it'd be really hard to do a power clean or power snatch from this position. It's going to be much easier to do a full clean or full snatch from here. It also kind of puts all the emphasis on dropping down into the squat position rather than pulling up against the bar. The next stage would be to lower the bar position. So we'd go from the hip down to below the knee. The reason we want to go below the knee is that it teaches us the transition of pulling the bar around the knees, so we don't get into a position where we're just levering back on the bar and slamming our hips into it and then dropping down. This would teach us to use our legs, so we're still generating power, but at the same time it limits us in the ability to generate height on the bar. So we're going to get a little bit better power than we would from the hip, but not so much that we can still power the weight. The second variation of this would be to do a snatch or clean from the hang below the knee, but without a hook grip. The reason we want to use no hook grip is because getting rid of the hook grip eliminates the ability to kick the bar with our hips or to generate a ton of power with our hips, because it would pop out of our hands with just a regular simple grip. So that'll kind of cut down on the amount of horsepower we can generate and kind of give us the chance to sneak under the bar, squat down under the bar better, without being reliant on our original technique of pulling up as high as possible. And then finally, the last drill for moving under the bar better is to focus on drop snatches and snatch balances. This is really just a simple drill to kind of reinforce dropping down and catching the weight at the same time. It's a good drill for people that power a lot more than they can do in the classic lifts, because it reinforces that bottom position. It reinforces jumping into that position more aggressively. The second problem, poor mobility, not being able to squat down all the way, maybe some weaknesses or some balance issues. Best way to fix this, what we want to emphasize here, overhead squats. We want to reinforce what it's going to feel like in the bottom position. We want to stretch out the bottom position, spend more time in the bottom position of the overhead squat, because it's going to really help us open up the mobility positions in our hips, our knees, our ankles. In addition to that, we want to spend some time there. So we would do some pauses in the bottom of the overhead squat. Every snatch you do, every power snatch you do, even if you catch it high, you still want to ride the bar down, sit down all the way and hold that bottom position. The more time you spend there, the more comfortable it's going to be for you. And then finally, for the snatch, we would do some SOTS presses. This is a great exercise. Once you've developed some comfort in the bottom position, pressing from behind the head with a snatch grip or from in front of the head with a clean grip is a great way to reinforce, one, more position and time in the bottom position, but also the musculature that holds the bar over your head. The more flexible and supple your shoulders become, the easier it's going to be to catch that weight in the bottom, and it's going to be less difficult for you to actually receive the weight if you have a little bit of wiggle room, some extra strength in your shoulders, just general conditioning to allow you to catch weights down there. For the clean, the biggest thing we're going to do is front squats. And when we do front squats, We want to make sure that every power clean we do, we still ride it down to the front squat. Even if you catch it halfway, we ride it down. If you power it all the way, you're going to ride it down and spend extra time in the front squat. Front squats could also be done with a pause, sitting in the bottom position and holding that position for longer, just like we would for the overhead squat and the snatch. We want to really make sure we're spending the extra time in the bottom of that position so that we get comfortable there and build up a little bit of strength for it. Finally, the last problem is the fear of squatting under the bar. How do we solve this? How do we get around this? Outside of mental rehearsal, outside of practice, with the aspect of, kind of convincing ourselves to go under the bar, there's some practical things we can do that will actually help. So the first one is we want to eliminate all the things that are stopping us from going under the bar. One of those is going to be we're training too heavy, right? If we're so afraid to go under the bar because the weight is too heavy, then we should train with lighter weights. So more consistent practice with good technique and sub-maximum weights will help us build up to larger numbers in the future. So first thing, drop the weight down to a weight that we can actually do a full snatch or full clean. If that weight doesn't exist, if we're just doing power snatches or power cleans all the time, then what we want to do is emphasize these three things in this order. 1, try to do no more powers. Try to focus on catching every single lift and then riding it into the bottom position every time. That means that if you power snatch, for a set of 3, then every single rep of those sets, you're going to squat down to the bottom position all the way before you recover. We need to develop and build the foundation of that bottom position before we move on in weight, before we move on to the next rep. The second thing would be to work towards the next kilogram rather than thinking about doing it perfectly. It's better for us to focus on catching the weight, squatting down, and building up that process, getting comfortable with the weights, getting comfortable with the movements, rather than thinking about like, oh man, I got to do a full snatch tomorrow, or I got to do a full clean, all as one motion. Just think about adding that extra inch of mobility, adding that extra little bit of technique to the lift every single time, rather than focusing on getting the complete thing all in one picture. And then finally, if possible, the main thing we want to do is try to avoid doing more powers. That would mean that we would never program power snatch or power clean in our programming. This kind of goes for every weakness. Just avoid them altogether. Focus more of your energy on the main things that are going to fix the issue you have, rather than kind of saying, well, I'll power for now until I get better, then I'll work on going the full clean or full snatch. Just get rid of them and focus on the classic lifts to start.